It is a crazy market right now. I mean, it is a extreme seller's market. There is no inventory. I mean, it's hard to be a buyer in this market. I've never seen anything like this in my 15 years. And trying to get your leg up as a buyer in this market is tough and challenging. Of course, start working with the realtor because they have a lot of the ins and outs. But I am someone that's of an inventor myself. I love creativity. And here are 5 tips that a buyer can use to kind of gain back that leverage that they need to be competitive in this market. Okay, before we dive into this, if you like watching videos about the Iowa City area real estate market, make sure you subscribe and follow me for more news, upcoming trends, and other really cool house tours that I'm bringing to you here in the next couple months. All right, let's start and dive into this. So the 5 tips I'm gonna give to you today, they're in no particular order. Every situation is different. Your realtor is your best advisor, and they will have tips based on that situation of which one of these methods or tips here could work to help tip that scale in your favor. The realtor will be able to give you that best advice, and using all 5 of these won't be the best way to give you a competitive edge. It really is gonna be dependent on that situation. So let's go into these in no particular order, starting with our favorite, escalation clauses. Everyone's doing escalation clauses these days. So I talked about this in a previous video. I don't want to dive too deep into it, but you're looking at 3 things with an escalation clause. 1, whatever form you use to fill out the escalation clause, it needs to have a bona fide offer. You need to, 1, show that the other offer that comes in is a true offer and that it's a real offer. And that means that the agent has to provide proof of that other offer. 2, you need to have an escalation factor. We'll talk about that in a second. And the 3rd thing is you need to have a cap. Okay, so what is an escalation clause? So a lot of people just call it an escalator, just like what you see in an airport or whatever. It's an escalating clause that allows you to not jump all the way to the top in a multiple offer competitive situation. So let's use an example. If a house is listed for $300,000, let's say you'd be willing to pay $340,000 for that house. So you could just, they're getting multiple offers. You could just submit an offer for $340,000. That would be just throwing it all in. Okay, but maybe you don't want to do that because that's a lot of money. That's over 10% of the list price. So what you might do is you might start at $300,000 offer with an escalation factor of, say, $5,000 to match the next offer, up to a cap of the $340,000 in this example. So if the other offer, and if there's only one other offer, we'll keep it simple, came in at $320,000, then you would match $320,000 plus $5,000, you'd be at $325,000. So you see how that's beneficial because $325,000 is much less than had you just gone in and offered all the way up to the top, the $340,000 from the start. So this is really helpful to not have to go all the way up to the top, and it gives the buyer a little bit of leverage back, even though they would have been willing to pay $340,000. It gives them some negotiation room to not have to go all in and throw their chips completely on the table. There's a lot of things that go into escalation clauses, determining what your escalation factor is, determining what your starting offer is, and then all the other components of the offer are very important things that you really consult with your realtor to figure out what the best scenario is. But that's one of my 5 tips is escalation clauses. Consider using them if your realtor recommends them. Okay, number 2, this is a new strategy that we're seeing in our market, and this has had a lot of success. I've used it and had a lot of success. It has its place, and it has some times when it doesn't work. So talk to your realtor about it, but it's accelerated response times. Okay, this is also getting back to getting that leverage back from the seller. So what sellers are doing is they're shooting a property live on Friday, and they're saying, we're not accepting offers till 5 o'clock on Sunday or noon on Monday. And so they're waiting multiple days on purpose because they want to gather as many offers as they can. And maybe they all have escalation clauses, and they're all trying to trigger all the way up to the cap as high as they can go and get it the highest price possible. I get it, it's a seller's market. How do you buy that back from a buyer? Well, every minute that a property sits on the market, there's a chance it's gonna get more offers. And so we need to provide some sort of incentive to push that leverage back on to give the buyer the opportunity to win the property without having to wait all the way till 5 o'clock on Saturday or noon on Monday. Here's an example. Say a property goes live at noon on Friday, and it says they're they're going to accept offers at any time, but they're waiting to accept offers till 5 o'clock on Sunday. You could submit an offer for a price, let's use the $300,000 example again, of $305,000, And then on the back of that offer, right? But if you respond by 10 a.m. on Saturday, I will increase another $10,000 to give them a bonus to sign and accept it earlier than the 5 o'clock on Saturday. So you've now pushed that terms up to your preferences, and that more often than not will say, the seller will look at it and say, geez, I could avoid 30 more showings over the next 48 hours if I just accept this offer that has this $10,000 bonus if I sign it now. This has become a big strategy because the other thing that helps in this offer is if they let that period pass, if the seller lets that period pass, then the offer isn't for $315, it's only $305. And so it doesn't trigger the escalation clause all the way up to the top, which is also a big advantage as a buyer. We're seeing this all across the United States right now. It's the new hottest technique. West Coast is using it a lot. Hasn't quite caught on in our local market yet, but the agents that are using it are winning and they're finding a lot of success in it. So you may want to discuss having an accelerated timeline built into the offer. Okay, let's go into another method that, again, hasn't quite picked up in my local market, but I see it in a lot of markets across the United States, and that is having a hard earnest money. So what is hard EM? So hard earnest money means rather than just have, say, $5,000 down as earnest, that's gonna be there through the contingencies and the offer process. You're saying, here's a $5,000 non-refundable deposit, period. I am in this to win it. Well, that looks really good to a lot of sellers. They're like, wow, they're willing to just throw $5,000 down, period, and I get to keep it regardless of what happens in the contingencies throughout the offer. This is a serious, serious buyer. So this is working in a lot of markets. Might be something you do here. If you don't want to do a hard EM, maybe you just do a larger earnest payment, like rather than $5,000, you could do like a $15,000 earnest payment. Keep it as a traditional earnest where you still have your contingencies and stuff to meet before you head to closing, but that's an option that could work for you as well. Okay, so other strategies. One of the really popular ones right now is a rent back option. So why is a rent back option really popular? Well, interest rates are rising for the first time in almost 16 years. And so those rates can only be locked in 60 to 90 days from closing. And often sellers are selling a house, but they don't have identified the new house they're buying, or they just don't have their plans quite set up for whatever their next move is. So you could write an offer with a possession, or a closing rather, but a delayed possession. So maybe the closing would be 2 months from now that allows that buyer to still lock in their interest rate today. But then they're gonna rent back the property, meaning the possession isn't till a month after that, allowing the seller to stay in the property another month while they try to figure out where they're going next. And the rent back, it's a negotiable term. All terms of a contract are negotiable, but more often than not, we're seeing buyers just say, we'll allow the seller to stay there and do a rent back for $0. Now, why would they want to do that? Because the interest rates are increasing, and even say a rent of $1,500 a month, they're gonna save $1,500 on the long-term interest rate on that loan. So they want to just make sure that they can lock in their interest rate, which you can only lock an interest rate in once you have a signed contract. So get this contract signed, lock in the interest rate, we'll close, we don't mind, they've gotta wait another 30 days to take possession, push it out. So rent backs have become really popular. Again, talk to your agent, they're your best advisory, they'll tell you whether that scenario works for you or not, but I'm seeing a lot of sellers have delayed possessions after closing that have these rent back options built in. Okay, what other options do we have? So this fifth category here is it's just an empty one. There's a lot of other things that go into offers. The two things I'm seeing that are winning multiple offer situations the most are price and inspections. So one of the things that you really want to focus on is the price, how you're going to do the appraisal that goes with it if you're doing a bank mortgage. If you're doing cash, well, then you got the upper hand. And on inspections, how are you handling those inspections? Because the offers that are winning on price and inspections. I never in my career or any past time would tell a buyer, buy a property without an inspection. In fact, it rocks me to my core to say that that's what's happening now. But the offers that are winning are coming in with no inspections, which is crazy. I mean, you're buying a house, you want to have some sort of just security in knowing that the house is a good, safe house. So how do you do that? Well, one tip is I've been starting to bring contractors or builders or inspectors with me to the showing with the buyer. Now, granted, a home inspection is 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours. These are 5, 10-minute, quick and dirty inspections, but they're looking for the major things like cracks and foundation and safety issues. They're not gonna be able to test every outlet. They're not gonna be able to test every plumbing fixture, every window, those kind of things. But they can get a rough overview and give the buyer a little bit of security that might put them in the position that if the house is the right house, and again, every situation is different, that they might want to consider removing that inspection contingency. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying these are the offers that are winning, and this is a strategy that probably needs or deserves some merit of you considering and looking into if you want to be that winning offer. Okay, let's go back to price. So when you're making an offer, price is a big thing, but it's not the only thing. If you're not using cash, which most buyers are using a loan, then coming up with that price and how you're gonna be able to finance it is really what's gonna be the winning. You don't even have to be the top bid. So if you have a $300,000 house and you're financing it with a bank and your offer is for $320,000, what's the appraisal amount that you need to finance that house? Is it just the list price, $300,000, or is it the full $320,000? Or is it something in between, or is it something less than the list price? Determine what that is, because the lower it is, the better your offer is, the closer it is to, say, cash. Every seller gets cash at closing. They get a certified check. They don't get a suitcase, whether it's a cash buyer or a bank buyer. They're gonna get a certified check. So figure out how you can reduce the risk, because the appraisal is the only difference really between a cash and a conventional buyer. So finding a lower amount that you need for the appraisal, or if you can afford to, because you have a large down payment, remove the appraisal contingency completely, that could make your offer stand out, even if it's not the highest priced offer in a multiple offer situation. There's a lot of tips. Your realtor will know them, but these are 5 quick tips. These are strategies that we're seeing across the United States. We're seeing this response in the free and open market to the seller's market. And I love the creativity that a lot of my colleagues and agents are using. And I think some of these tips might be the winning strategy for you. Best of luck in the market. And if you need some help, give me a call.